we have time.
Oh, well, I'll go with this one in my hand. Well, first thing I'm going to do is an unboxing here of the drone. Yes, that flying machine is in this little box right here, right here. It's a Holy Stone 720E, which is probably one of the more popular models. Weighs a little bit over a pound. So I'm just going to do an unboxing here, and then we're going to go outside and do a bit of flying there to show you how we set up and operate it. But in the box here, that's the charger for the batteries. I'm going to leave that here. This is actually the machine that's all folded up, fits in that box. It's a quadcopter drone, which are probably the most popular models in use right now. I'll go over in the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, a little bit more about the design of these, and I'll be unfolding it outside. This is the control unit, which has some brains to it, but actually the major brains of communication between this and the drone is going to be with my good old smartphone, essentially. There's a cradle on this it will fit onto. And other things they provide in here, well, they only give you one battery with the drone. I bought a spare. These batteries will give you about, with this model, about 20 minutes of operating time with it. And then the other thing we find in here is spare rotors, spare propellers. You'll find you'll need them because try as you might, you will run into things more solid than air with these drones. And they're pretty resilient. These props don't break readily. The way they're designed, they're on a pivot, so if it does hit something, it has some give. But you hit enough hard objects, they're going to get nicked, they're going to get distorted, maybe develop cracks, and then eventually you're going to have either instability when you're trying to fly the drone or an imbalance, which also would make it hard to control. And of course, they have the manual there as well. And it all fits into this nice little case right here. So, and with that, I think we'll go ahead and move outside while we have some daylight, and I'll give you all a flying demonstration. Any questions before we do that? Holy Stone 720 Echo.
Okay, so Laurie's going to try. Mark has his cell phone on. He's going to be taking that outside, which is on Zoom. When we get outside, Laurie will, I believe, spotlight Mark's Zoom camera, and hopefully everybody will be able to see that. Unfortunately, she can't call me on my cell phone because I left it home. So we're going to assume everything works, and I'm going to turn this microphone off.
I think we got everybody here who plans to be upfront and personal to see it. All right, well, the drone folds up nicely into a little box. It is a quadcopter, so you need to unfold the... oops, I have to do it in a certain sequence because they overlap. Unfold the rotors, like so. It's a quadcopter, 4 rotors. And the other thing I have on here, this is actually aftermarket, these little landing skids. The way these come, they just land on their belly from the manufacturer. I didn't like that very much. But on Amazon, I found a set of skids that just snaps onto it. Very inexpensive, and I like to have that elevation. Not so much a problem here with grass, but if I was landing on the parking lot with all that gravel and everything, I really don't want the rotors coming down that close. So that's the drone. I'm going to get the control unit together, which is this nice little box. That's the joysticks. There's some control buttons on here. These are the antennas. And I don't know why they put 2, because only one of them is a real antenna. The wire goes up into this one. I guess they just like symmetry. What can I say? And then there's a cradle that snaps out here. And that's going to hold my phone on there. The smartphone is actually what will allow me to communicate with the drone. We're using the Wi-Fi signal. So this is a Wi-Fi generator, that drone there. And the phone will connect to it. And that's how we also have our video link. I'll be able to see on the phone what the camera is seeing on the drone while it's flying. I also have a little LCD screen here, which gives me some other information.
an old wire-haired guy. He's right here.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're back there. All right.
Okay, we're back on?
Yeah.
Now, the first thing I want to do is, and I'll go over this in the presentation, is to make sure that I am allowed to fly right now. You might get, normally here, not a problem, but you might get a government, here comes the EOC again. We're probably going to lose your feed again. The FAA puts out a app called Before You Fly. I'm going to go over that in the PowerPoint demonstration. But what that does is I can call it up, it'll look at my GPS coordinates, and right now it's saying clear for takeoff. There's no restrictions here right now. Other areas, like if we're getting closer to RDU, we might be in their control zone and had to actually get permission. I'll show how that's taken care of. If I were to try to launch this in the middle of Camp Lejeune, they probably wouldn't let me. So that would be restricted airspace. So, okay, we're clear to go here. So the next thing I'm going to bring up is Ophelia Go, which is the proprietary software that's used for the drone here and everything. So several things I have to do is, it's going to be telling me right now that it doesn't see anything right now. So I need to actually power up the drone. So there's a button here I'm going to turn. It's beeping. And one thing I want to do with the drone, you'll see these yellow lights. It's not synchronized right now with the home point. In order for me to synchronize this as the home point, geosynchronization, I have to do 3 turns slowly, at least 3 turns, horizontally. And I'll tell you later why this is important from personal experience. And then you're going to turn the drone vertically and also do 3 slow turns.
Calibrating the compass.
You're calibrating an onboard compass, and also it's calibrating that this is home where I'm launching from. And if I'm doing it right, still not calibrating. Okay. Yep. The other thing is I might need to power this up too at the same time. Yeah, it's telling me it did not. Let's try that again. Okay. 1, 2, 3. And now vertically. 1, 2. If I see green and red lights like that, we're now synchronized. So now I'm going to set that down. I am going to put the phone into the cradle. Which is easier said than done. This went so smoothly when I was practicing by myself last week. All right. And we're about ready to fly. I'm going to move this back out of the way. So the first thing I'm going to do is there's a lock button on here. I'm going to unlock the rotors. If all is well, they're going to power up and start spinning. Not enough to lift it just yet. And there we go. And then there's a quick takeoff button. What I'm going to do is hit quick takeoff. It's going to go up and hover about 5 feet or so and hover. I want to check for stability of the machine there. So let's see. Oh, and the rotor turned off. Let's try that again. There we go. And right now it's looking pretty stable. If I didn't have a good geosynchronization, it actually might start circling, or even worse, what happened to me once was it was trying to find the old home point from the last time I ran it, which was somewhere that way. It took off skimming across the grass here and crashed. So that looks good. Now the left-hand joystick here, if I push upward, forward, upward. So that allows you to elevate. If I, on the other hand, if I push down, it lowers altitude. If I go left, it's going to rotate counterclockwise. It's drifting a bit because I'm probably not exactly going right with the joystick. I'm pushing a little bit upwards at the same time. Push the other way, and it rotates that way. Now with the right joystick, if I go up, it's actually going to pitch and move forward. And then same, I could back it up. Whoop. Let's try that again. Up, going the wrong way. Okay, this is backwards. And then if I push left or right on the right joystick, it's going to side slip. Keep the camera pointed in the same direction, but side slip. And then I have a thumb wheel on here. Oop. And actually, let me close this. On the screen here, I'm seeing what the camera's seeing. So right now it's looking at all you folks. And if I use a thumb wheel here, I can adjust the camera. Right now it's at the horizon. I can adjust the camera downward. So wave, I'm about to take a picture. Hello. All right. So I'm going to take it up to a higher altitude. I could go up to 350 feet with this. The legal maximum height I can go is 400 feet. Beginner's mode, which I have this on, it'll let me go as high as 350 feet. If I go to the more advanced modes, the highest it'll let me go is 395 feet. It just wants to account for any inaccuracies in figuring the altitude to keep it all legal, essentially. And that's the view going out there. And I'm going to rotate it a bit. And we're getting a nice view of the neighborhood right now. So, and you can look on the screen here. We're looking out to the horizon, and I could rotate down. So it's looking at us right now. That's you and me right there. All right, I'm going to lower the altitude a little bit. And we'll go for a little bit of a cruise. Let's see. Let me bring this out. It will eventually. There are a couple of fail-safe mechanisms. That's US 70 we're looking at right now. And I'm just going to take it for a bit of a cruise right now. So it says on the specs that clear line of sight. I could go out 3,000 feet with this thing. I probably won't do that because the battery will probably be starting to run out by the time I get there, and it's going to bring itself back. Also, 3,000 feet, I'm not sure I could still see this thing. So, and
Where's the camera pointing?
the camera is now pointing towards US 70. So, yeah.
Dave, can you give it a point, like go 300 feet over there?
You can. There's a way. I haven't done that yet, but yes, you actually pull up a map on here and tap in waypoints, and it will follow the waypoints.
Wait,
I pulled up a little fishing sinker on there, and I tried to use it to lift a line over a tree. Sherry can tell you about that. We succeeded on one tree. One tree we succeeded. The other we didn't. There was too much drag. Let me see. There's also a following mode, and I'm trying to remember where it is on here. Basically, I could tell it to follow me. It'll go by the GPS coordinates in my smartphone, and if I start moving, it will follow me. I'm trying to remember how I did that, so I could show you all. Well, anyway, let's go on another trip. Now, I think if I push, I'm on video mode now, so I am going to pan around. And I'm not the greatest videographer, but there you folks are. And by the way, this is slow mode that this is set for. There's also a high speed mode where it's going to react much more quickly to my commands. I made the mistake of using that when I was first flying this. So the first move I made was put it into a tree. Hey, pardon? Can it fly? It can be rolled from what I heard. I've never attempted it. There's a way of quickly doing it with a side slip, and then you decelerate and you could do a roll with it. But I'll probably roll it and put it into the ground if I try to do it. So, but anyway, yeah, I'm going to lower altitude, elevate the camera slightly. Oop, and fly towards you guys. All right. With a little bit more practice, I'll actually be able to maneuver this. Bruce, put your arms like this. You might get a haircut. But I'm going to raise it up. We're going to get a nice picture of the horizon. 39 meters right now. 39 meters. And I'm going to just rotate and look at the horizon. We'll have a nice little movie for later on. So
People on Zoom were asking if you were filming.
I am. Currently, I am. And right now, the battery's still in good shape. You'll notice on the top of my screen, there's this green here. There's still a good amount of charge left. When it turns to yellow, there's actually some fail-safe subroutines that go on here. When the battery starts running low on voltage, yeah, there's birds. Yeah. That's interesting. Actually, those are chimney swifts. They're not bats. You know what? They eat mosquitoes and stuff. I wonder if the buzzing of the rotor is getting their attention. Yeah. So I'm going to bring it down a little. Interesting. All right. I'm going to try to use the follow me mode. So I'm going to walk out over here. Swipe right to follow me. And now it's going along with me. All right, now I just canceled that. And I'm going to stop the video, take a few more photographs. And again, I'm going to adjust the camera angle. All right, now this is the side slipping, so I could slide slip right and still keep the same bearing. And I'm going to raise up. I'm going to try to run down the battery a little bit so you know you can start seeing some of the safety subroutines. And you can fly it at night. They actually has a light you can turn on it so for flying at night. I've not done that.
You're still in the green.
I'm still in the green. I'm trying to work it so I run down the battery a little bit. I'm trying to run the battery down so we can see the subroutine happen, but that's probably
I thought that was the drone.
yeah, that's about as high as it'll let me run it. So
Wow.
I'm at the legal height right now. Yeah, I'm trying to run the battery down for the end of the demonstration, but that was 60 meters. That's as high as it'll let me run it right now. And let me take some nice horizon shots then. So, oop. Hello.
That looks a lot more than 160 feet,
No,
doesn't it?
no, 350.
60 meters though.
Oh,
That's
60.
3 feet per meter. That's 180 feet. So it's probably like
Oh.
90.
Yeah, I could probably go higher than that.
In 300 feet, you should be pushing like 80 meters.
There we go.
I'd say 79 meters now,
Pretty
Wilson.
darn high.
Wilson?
Yep.
79 now.
Sorry?
79 meters now.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna
It's up to 79 meters.
rotate and take some horizon shots here.
Yeah, yeah, you can tell from more than a.
All right.
So small. Yeah.
Yep. I'm gonna start bringing it down. Now, when it goes to the battery goes to yellow, it'll automatically drop it down to about 98 feet.
Is the green the battery?
That's the battery. So
Okay.
it's still. I guess I
I was
shouldn't.
looking for a battery indicator and it's the whole top, which is smart. Make it a
Yes.
real big picture.
Yes.
It's been hovering that green for a while.
Yeah. But if we're running out of time, I can just bring it home. So,
Is there a command to say come home?
yes. That's what this is. This is return to home. And that's the landing subroutine as well.
Yeah, pretty much every YouTube video I watch these days, there's a drone shot. I think it's required now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will have that.
Wedding pictures, drone shot.
That's right.
Yep. Or real estate companies. They
Oh,
have big,
definitely.
big time.
Yeah.
So
I guess every one of our meetings will have to have a
Aha.
drone shot now.
we got
Okay, it's yellow now.
it's
Okay.
yellow. So now it's not going to let me go higher than 100 feet. It also won't let me go further than 300 feet from the home landing point.
Gotcha.
So it's going to give the battery a chance to bring it home. And you'll notice the lights on the drone started flashing red also. So it's
Yep.
starting to tell me that.
If I don't come home, I'll be down on
Right.
shortly.
And then when it goes to red, it automatically drops to 50 feet, homes in, and comes to a landing over the point. That's why you had to make sure if you're in the yellow zone and you're out there, if there's a 60-foot tree in between home and here, it's going to fly into the tree. so it'll drop to 50 feet. But
Are there drones that have collision avoidance?
yes, this one does not, but there's others that are built with collision avoidance in them. The more higher end ones do.
Crossband repeater.
Yeah.
Have really good emergency.
Yep. Well, I'm just rotating it. Yeah. So probably within a couple of minutes, you'll hear an alarm going off here. It'll turn red, and you'll see it do the landing routine, essentially. And this tells me move to distance 23 meters, height 25 meters.
Okay.
So I have a backup on here. The other safety routines on here is if it loses the signal from here for more than 6 seconds, it'll return
Based on
home.
the starting GPS.
The battery is intermediate right now, low battery. When it goes to red, yes, yeah, that's what it means. And that's the view I'm getting out of the camera right now. So
Great camera.
yeah, 4K. Let me rotate. There we
There
go.
we go.
It's the battery's running out. It's gonna return home. So I'm not sure where the landing point is. Watch out, it might land on you. Guys, look out.
Looking for something great.
So it's running out of juice. It's automatically going to land now.
That's outstanding.
There we go. And I took a video of the landing. Okay. All righty. About flying recreational drones, which is what you saw there. And as I say here, the really inexpensive way to become a pilot. So next slide, please. That's fine. So what is a drone? Well, the very broad definition is any unmanned, remotely piloted craft. It can be very large, the military types you see, which are used for surveillance or for actually firing munitions. There are some that are used for cargo carrying applications. But it has to be reusable. So remotely piloted missiles aren't really considered a drone. Okay. And for recreational use, according to the FAA, excuse me, it must be smaller than 55 pounds. Regulators generally refer to them as a UAV or unmanned aerial vehicle. So when were the first drones out? World War I actually was the first time they started using drones. They were used mostly for towing targets for aerial gunnery, essentially. A lot of the pilots that did it organically, flying planes towing a target, it was too great a risk. I even heard of one pilot saying after one run, he got out of his plane and found shrapnel embedded in his parachute after he stepped out. So that's the first time drones were used, I presume with wireless signals to in a military application. Yes. Yeah, very good.
Really important. Start back that drone.
Go ahead.
Marilyn Monroe
Okay. Oh, very good. Well, that's unintended consequences, more of the good kind, I suppose. Next slide, please. Now, the FAA regulations for flying drones, FAA Part 107 is what regulates that. I pulled it up, scanned a few pages. It's very long. It covers everything on drones. No license is needed if it's under 55 pounds and if it's only used for recreation. So that's what they call the recreational exemption. All operators must have certification. So you have to pass this recreational UA safety test, which is available on the FAA website. I have links put up later on where you can see that. So I took it a year ago. It's a lot of it's really common sense regulations, and it's pretty much an open book test. They want to make sure you're cognizant of the regulations for safely flying a drone. 15 to 30 minutes, and it's absolutely free. If you're going for a license for non-recreational use, that's a more extensive course. You're actually getting at least in North Carolina, you're getting an airman's registration number and everything for that. And it probably runs you more money, $150 or so to take that particular course. So on completion of this test, a certificate is issued and operators must carry a copy of the certificate. Mine is in my laptop right there. So if anybody was to ask, it's in there. Next slide, please. And that's a copy of the safety test certificate there. So that I have. And next slide. So more FAA regulations. This is one where I realized very recently that I was actually being non-compliant. If it's greater than 250 grams, the drone must be registered with the FAA. I knew very small drones, if you call them micro drones, didn't require registration. I made the mistaken assumption that mine was a micro drone. As it turns out, it's not. When I looked at the specs, I realized, ooh, I'm way over 250 grams. So all the times I've flown this previously, I was being a scofflaw. So I got on the FAA site last week and went ahead and got myself a certificate of registration. And basically, you open up an account there, you got to list what drone or drones you have, and then you're given a registration number. The registration number is for me, but every drone I have, I can put that same registration number on. They just want to be able to identify it back to the operator, essentially. Next slide, please.
Sounds like the ATL helped.
Perhaps. The flight restrictions for the recreational exemption are no commercial use. So you can do photography for fun, but if you're photographing your house to make a sale or selling the photographs or using it for any other pecuniary interest, kind of like amateur radio, then you have to have a different kind of license to operate it. You don't have the recreational exemption. Maximum altitude is 400 feet in uncontrolled space. Mine is still in beginner's mode. It cuts itself off at 350 feet. So, and I can make it, if I want to go to the more advanced modes, I can make it go to as high as 395 feet. It won't let me go to 400. It's making sure I'm still legal to make up for any inaccuracies there might be in the altitude reading, essentially. I should say it's up to a maximum altitude of 400 feet in controlled airspace. So, for instance, with airports, as you get closer and closer, they may cut the maximum level to 300 feet, 200 feet, depending on distance from runways. It must not interfere with any other aircraft. All other aircraft have right of way. You have to give way. So if you see something approaching, get it down to a safe altitude and get it out of their way. And you can't fly out of federal property such as national parks, wildlife refuges, most government facilities. There's a bit of a legal loophole here. It says you can't fly them out of it. You can actually fly over those spots, and you can actually fly it over private property as well. Airspace is free. However, you might get some unwelcome attention doing that. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Yes.
Can't be flown. Kind of ambiguous.
You can't use you can't fly it from or land it in Yeah, you can't originate or land it in federal property. You could fly over it. I wouldn't recommend flying it over Camp Lejeune. You might get very unwelcome attention. Yeah. Next slide, please. How do you tell if it is unrestricted airspace? You use the Before You Fly app. That's a free app that you can find on the FAA website. I use it out there to verify that this area is normally clear for unrestricted flight. There is a airstrip about a mile north of here, but it's not a controlled airstrip. So I'm free to fly anywhere around here pretty much. It uses the GPS on your smartphone to determine your position, but also you can also pull up the map. It's kind of like Google Maps. You can zoom in and out, go to different locations to see where you are allowed to fly or where you're not allowed to fly. And it'll inform you if you're in unrestricted airspace. If it is restricted space, it provides a link for an LAANC or low altitude authorization notification capability. You have to get permission to fly in there essentially. So it allows near real time authorization to fly from a controlling entity, such as an airport. And also it'll warn you if you're in a no-fly zone. When I go vacationing on Chincoteague with Karen, we can't fly a drone there. We're outside of Wallops Island. It's restricted airspace all around there. And if I go over to Assateague Island, that's a national wildlife refuge. You cannot fly in a national wildlife refuge. So next, please. And this is a screen capture from, I was helping my father prepare to move from his apartment in the Bronx. And just for giggles, I pulled up Before You Fly. We were on an 18th floor apartment, so needless to say, I'm not launching a drone out of there. But the blue dot is where we were. This circle here is actually the control zone for LaGuardia Airport. So probably if I walked out of my father's apartment and went a quarter mile north, that's unrestricted space over there. I could fly. Because it's controlled airspace, you can click on some of the windows there to find out what the parameters are. So the controlled airspace was LaGuardia Airport there, Class B. You can get permission to fly there. So we were out there far enough that if we get the LANC, we could go up to 400 feet. If we were closer to LaGuardia Airport, it might be lowered to 300 feet or just 200 feet maximum, depending on how close you get to the runways. They want to keep it at a safe level below approaching aircraft, essentially. And then, of course, once you get really, really close there, it's a no-fly zone for drones at all. Next, please. North Carolina has further drone restrictions. So the FAA regs all take precedence, of course. If you're going for non-recreational use, you also have to take an NC knowledge test. I looked to see if I could take it just for giggles, but I had to give them an airman's registration number, which I don't have. So I can't tell you what's on their test. You may not take off or land on property without the owner's permission, essentially. So that it's not just permission from an airport or anything like that. If you're flying from private property, the owner has to give you permission to use a drone there. You may not photograph people or their homes without permission. There's a short video I have at the end of this. The reason I went to the short video instead of my longer video is that for one thing, I zoomed in on one of the neighbors' houses over here. I did not know about this law, so I wasn't going to do a close-up of the neighbor's house without their permission. What's that? What's that?
Can't photograph their home without permission.
That's what they say. That's what they say. Now, some of the pictures I took here today going out to the horizon, we're going to see 100 homes way out over the horizon, but I'm taking it as we're not trying to deliberately photograph somebody's house. Photograph. So you could fly over and look around, but there's one famous YouTube video I saw where the last picture on the drone's camera was a woman with a shotgun doing this. So you may not want to fly over other people's properties without permission anyway. The UAV may not be flown over any prison, state, or federal. And also municipalities and venues may have their own restrictions on venues. Beaches, of course, because they're crowded. Even if it's not a national seashore, they're probably not going to let you fly there. You may not fly in a sports venue. I'm a living historian, so we have battle reenactments going on. We actually had a problem a few years ago when drones were kind of a new thing, that a lot of people in the crowd were flying drones right in close over us on the battlefield. So you're trying to have an 18th century battle going on, and there's a noisy drone flying right over you and ruining everybody's photo ops from over in the crowd. So most historical reenactments I know now will not allow drones to be flown there. Next slide, please. So how do drones maneuver? Well, quadcopter drones, like the one you see here, are the most popular type. They're the easiest to control, essentially. Two of the rotors spin clockwise and two of the others spin counterclockwise to cancel out the torque. And then there's a microprocessor aboard that helps maintain that kind of stability. So all four of the rotors will increase speed to rise grain altitude. If you let go of the joystick, it should stabilize at that one particular altitude, will hold speed. And then when you decrease the rotor speed on all four, it'll lower altitude, lowers lift. To rotate, to yaw, one diagonal set of rotors will start increasing speed and the other set will decrease. So you're augmenting the torque to rotate in the direction you want. But the other set of rotors that's not spinning to increase the torque in one direction will actually slow down a bit. So actually you're not gaining altitude. It'll hold the same altitude but rotate. And then when you're moving laterally, it's the two rotors to the rear of the direction you want to go that are going to speed up. So when I'm moving that drone forward being where the camera is, the two rotors in the rear are going to speed up, and it's going to pitch forward and move forward that way. When I was making it side slip left or right, if I was side slipping left, the two rotors on the right would increase speed a bit, and it'll pitch a little bit and go to the left that way. Yep, that's basically how they do it. So next slide, please. Control of a drone. Well, as I just mentioned, the microprocessor board controls the rotor speeds. It monitors the position via the GPS, and it monitors the speed and the altitude. The commands are received from this control unit, the handheld control unit, via radio links. Most common are 2.4 or 5.8 gigahertz. That's your Wi-Fi signals. Sometimes 900 megahertz. Amateur bands that have been used for drones in the US are 433 megahertz and 1.3 gigahertz. Exactly how they do it on amateur radio, I haven't been able to find out the wherewithal for that, but that's mostly homebrewed drones that utilize those signals there, as opposed to the commercially produced. So mine uses 2.4 gigahertz, and the Wi-Fi signal from my smartphone is used to link to the control unit and to the drone with links to the onboard camera. And higher end UAVs may have their own self-contained control units, so no smartphone necessary. They'll have their own big box, which has all that you need here to control the drone.
Control unit does not have a radio. Does not talk to the drone.
No, I have to use in this case, I have to use the smartphone to connect the two. Yep. Any other questions? Yeah. I don't know if the audience heard the questions. Is the little control box I have there does not put out a radio signal, essentially. The phone is what does it. So I had to link the phone between the control unit and the drone in that particular case to do the operation. Next slide, please. Well, actually, there is an antenna. I'll take that back. There is an antenna on the control unit, so there's some way the phone ties into that. But yeah, but at any rate, I'm told the specs on this particular drone is it can go out to 3,000 feet laterally if you have no obstructions in the way. I've never tried that. I have a feeling the battery would start running low by the time I get to that range, and it might bring itself back. Not to mention that thing is so tiny at 3,000 feet, I probably wouldn't be able to see it. And one of the regulations for operating drones recreationally is that you have to keep them within sight. So you have to be able to track it visually. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, the one that you see flying here, that's a Holy Stone 720E quadcopter drone. I purchased a secondhand off Amazon for $185 about a year and a half ago. New, they're about $300. 17.5 ounces. It's got a 4K video capable camera. The lithium battery packs on there, which are 7.4 volts, I believe, give you about 20 minutes of flight time. And that depends also on how much work you're making it do. If I raise it up and drop it down, which is I did out there deliberately to try to run down the battery so you could see the subroutine, it may run out a little faster than that. Or if you're bucking against a wind when you're moving forward, that kind of thing. The proprietary app that the software that runs this is called Ophelia Go. And then the kit also included spare propellers. You're going to need to replace the props eventually. You will run into things harder than air every once in a while. Charging unit for the batteries, the manual, and it all fits in that handy little case right there. Next, please. Next slide, please. And this is a couple of pages out of the manual that gives some of the details on it. There is a vision positioning lens on the bottom of this drone too, so there is a backup to GPS. It does do some visual scanning, and I've never tried that. They say that's what, if you want to fly it indoors, that's what you use where you may not have a GPS signal. I've not attempted to fly it indoors. Not until I find a big barn or something like that. I might test it out. There's a battery indicator on the machine itself. There's 4 LEDs on the back. It'll drop to 3 to 2 to 1 as you go. And you may have noticed on the demonstration out there that when the battery voltage started dropping, the drone itself started flashing these red lights on the forearms to the rotors to give you another visual cue that the batteries are starting to drop down in voltage a bit. And that's some pictures of the control unit there with the various controls on there, buttons, the joysticks. There's a thumb wheel that lets you rotate the camera from out to the horizon to straight down 90 degrees. Another button that lets you, if you do a short press, still photograph, long press, it kicks in and does a video with that. And a few other buttons as well. One's to lock the rotors, the quick launch routine, landing routine as well. Next slide, please. And I've just told you about that. Oop, there you go. So the unlock button for the rotors. The left joystick is what I use to ascend. Up to ascend, down to descend, left to rotate right. That's yawing left or yawing right. You're rotating. The right joystick is what you use to move it laterally. So essentially pushing it up, it'll go forward. Camera being the front of this. So you can actually set this on another mode where it doesn't have a front. I never tried that. I keep it with the camera as the front. It's easier for me to keep track of it that way. You can back it up, and then you can also just have it slide slip left or right, essentially using the other joystick. And it can be set to high speed or low speed. You saw me operating it at low speed right there. The low speed is better for photography. Since I had a lot of people standing around and I didn't want the drone to possibly go out of control and hit you guys, I kept it on slow speed just so I can control it better. I made the mistake when I first had this drone and trying to learn how to fly it. It was on high speed, which means you touch those joysticks. It was. So the first move I made was put it into a tree. The flight was very short, less than 5 seconds. And then I later figured out, oh, there's a slow speed on that. And I've been much happier with that for the purposes I use it for. There are people who do races and do obstacle courses with drones. And you use the high speed for that if you want to compete on that and have fun that way. Next slide, please. That's just a screenshot of me using it. There's a cradle on top of the unit that lets you set your smartphone. And when you power up Ophelia Go, once it verifies the links and everything and connects to the drone, this is actually a view here through the camera on the drone itself. So real time, I'm looking through the camera at what's going on. Next slide, please. So the pre-flight actions I do when I fly these is first use the Before You Fly app to make sure I'm allowed to fly there. It's not likely there'll ever be a restriction put in place here, but if there's ever any kind of emergency locally, they may restrict the flight of drones. I then place the smartphone in the cradle on top of the control unit, start the Ophelia Go app, power up the control unit and the drone, and I'm looking to see if I've established the Wi-Fi link to all of these. And then take a quick look at the drone to check for any cracks or deformities in the rotors itself, and make sure that the battery pack is secure. It's supposed to click into place. If I leave it loose, the vibration might just push it back out where the motors will cut out and have it drop. I then performed the geosynchronization, which you saw me do there, where I picked up the drone, rotated it slowly 3 times horizontally, and then 3 times vertically. That synchronizes the GPS signal with that point on Earth as the home point, essentially. I've learned the hard way that you got to do that every time, which they recommend in the manual as well. One time I forgot to do that. When I set up the drone, it started homing in on whatever last GPS point it was somewhere else. And when I powered up the rotors, it took off about a foot and shot across the field and plowed into the ground about 80 feet away. The other time when I knew I didn't have a geosynchronous lock was when I put it into a hover, it started doing a circle like this, an ever increasing circle. I couldn't really get control of it. And that time it ran into a wire and crashed. So I make sure that I'm very careful about the geosynchronization now. When you saw me out there before, my first attempt at the geosynchronization didn't work. And that was because I had forgotten to turn on the control unit. So it synchronizes with the control unit as well. If you do it properly, you'll notice that green lights at first that are blinking. Once it's synchronized, it blinks green and red. And that lets you know that you've got your synchronization done properly there. Then next, as I unlock the rotors, there's a lock rotor button on the control unit. I just hit that to unlock. And you saw that the rotors will then start spinning on there. Not enough to lift the drone, but to let you know that they're working, essentially. And then there's a 1-key takeoff button. You can, if you want, just hit the joystick to accelerate upward and take off. I prefer to use the 1-key button because it'll go up about 5 feet, stop and hover. And that's my check to make sure I really did a good job synchronizing it. So if I did it right, it's going to stay right there and not do the wobble or anything like that. If it's stable, I start flying it. Next, please. There are semi-autonomous actions on this. There's a button for return to home. So when I'm flying it out there, if I want to bring it back without working the joysticks, I could just hit that and it'll automatically home in to the home point and land itself. I showed you the follow me action there, which is you can set the parameters for 15 to 95 feet. When you hit the follow me, it's going to pick up the GPS coordinates and the control unit on the smartphone there. Point the camera towards it and follow. So you saw I was going across the field and the drone was following me as well. And I could do that anywhere. There's also a point of interest. If you want to have a good 360-degree view of an object out there, you hit that, and wherever that object is, that's now the point that it will orbit around. It'll keep the camera pointed towards the center of the orbit, and just go around it. And you can take a video then to get a 360-degree view of whatever you're interested in at the time. And then I just tap to go away from that, and it's back to my controls with the joysticks. And Wilson had asked before if there's a way to set waypoints on a map. Yes, there is. I can pull up a map on the smartphone, and I can tap waypoints onto it and have the drone follow that course for the waypoints as well. Yes, sir. Yeah, you have to make sure this particular drone does not have a collision avoidance. Higher end ones do. They have some way of sensing they may be approaching an object. I'm not sure what their routines are, if they automatically elevate or if they just stop and let you move around them, but that's my understanding. This is one of the cheaper drones, so I don't have that particular bell and whistle on it. I'd have to be mindful of that. Yeah. Next slide, please. And then there's safety subroutines too. On that screenshot I had of the Ophelia Go, you saw the splash of green on the top. That's the battery condition. So green means it's close to full charge, it's healthy. The maximum altitude for this will be 350 feet. In theory, it can run out to as far as 3,200 feet if there is enough strong enough signal and a clear path. I think the most I've run it out is probably close to 1,000 feet on a friend's farm one time, just to. Beyond that, I was going to have trouble seeing the drone, so I figured I'd better not push my luck, and I brought it back. If it goes to battery level yellow, it will descend to 98 feet and close to within 320 feet of the launch point. It's giving itself a buffer in case the battery starts running down even more, so it can make it all the way back. And in battery level red, which is what you all heard at the very end, it's going to descend to 50 feet and return to the launch point and land. So that goes back to your question. I better make sure that if the batteries are starting to run down, that I have no 60 or 70 foot trees in between the drone and the home point, because it's just going to go straight. It's not going to try to avoid it. And then it will automatically land itself. Some of the other safety subroutines are loss of control signal. If it loses the signal from the control unit for more than 6 seconds, it'll automatically home back and land. If you lose both control and the GPS signals, the drone will stop wherever it is and land right there. If you lose just the GPS but still have control, then basically you'll have to use the joysticks to walk it back and land it. And then there's a kill switch, which if you're getting into real trouble, if it's really going to go somewhere you don't want it to, you can hold down the power button on the control unit for 3 seconds and it'll cut the power to the rotors, but that means it's then absolutely going to crash. So I used that when I flew it into the tree that time, just quickly kill the rotors as fast as I could and get it to drop. Any questions on these? And most drones will have these safety subroutines built into them. Next, please. Oh yes, aftermarket accessories. So the skids on that particular drone here that you see here that I use for landing, those are aftermarket. As it comes from the manufacturer, this thing just lands on its belly. I didn't like that very much. So I took a look on Amazon, found they actually had snap-on skids available for this model of drone. Not very expensive, so I got those and I'm much happier with that. Keeps the drone a little bit higher off the ground when it lands, so not so much a problem when you're landing on grass, but if you're landing on a gravel parking lot, I'd rather keep the rotors up and away from kicking up any gravel or any dust or anything like that. Rotor guards can be used to help protect these. The only thing is when you have all these little accessories on there, you're also adding a bit more weight to the drone, so it might affect their the capability and flight time a little bit. But the drones are good. They do make models of this that are more geared for children. They come with those rotor guards on them, so it help prevent anybody from getting cut by these. They're very light propellers. They're actually on a pivot, so that if it does hit something, they're going to give, which helps keep the propellers from breaking, but also can help obviate any injuries if you fly it into a person. But you still don't want to do that. So rotor guards may be a good investment if you're going to be dealing with either people or a lot of brush or something like that. Landing pads, you can set that out on ground. I've seen various types of those, which even have a big target or some big geometrical figure in the middle of them. But that also will protect the drone from kicking up any dirt or anything like that when it's landing. And some of these drones will also have this one. I don't know if it'll utilize that, but there's actually an optical scanner on the bottom. It may help the GPS by also doing an optical scan, recognizing that as a home position and help cue in the drone to land where it is. In most cases with the GPS signal here, I've been able to have it fall within 3 feet of the launch point. Usually no problem. This has the GPS within it as well. But yeah, when I did the geosynchronization, it put that in its memory, onboard memory as 0. That's the home point. That's where it's going to try to go to. It will keep in mind the GPS position on my control unit, because it's also going to tell me how far it is from the control unit and how high up from the control unit. Now, when I do the follow me routine, it's using the GPS on my smartphone as this is the point I'm going to follow. when it's moving along the thing.
The accelerometers say,
Pardon?
are there accelerometers?
I haven't had a speed reading really on this one. I have to look into that just to be sure. Yeah, that I don't know. Some of the higher end drones may actually give you readouts on speed and such as well. I don't think I've seen that on this one. It'll give height and distance from the home point essentially, or distance from the controller. I think it'll do both. I think it'll give you 2 distance readings, one from the controller and one from the home point. And somebody asked before about using these to run pilot lines over trees to raise antennas. Yes, there's an aftermarket device you can attach to the hull with a separate little RF thingy that you can use to attach a spool so you can trail out line behind the drone, bring it up over a tree, and then when you hit that RF little transmitter thingy, it'll kick the spool loose and let it drop down the other side of the tree. So I've seen those out there. Next slide, please. Okay, there is a regulatory, we're having fun with this, right? So of course the government's got to get in on it and make sure we don't have too much fun. There's a regulatory bump in the road coming very shortly. So as of next month, 9/22, the FAA will require that all drones must remotely transmit the operator's ID number, that's that registration number I had there, as well as the position, altitude, and bearing while in flight of all drones. This does not have that capability. The majority of drones already out here do not. The newer drones do have this capability, but I looked online. Yes, you can buy aftermarket transmitters to attach to your drone to become compliant with this reg. Well, guess what? They cost more than it costs than that whole drone there. So I'm not likely to go for it. Yes. I have no idea. I don't know how it works. It might be one of those things where they see a drone and point something at it and get the idea. That's all I can think of. I don't know the mechanics of it all, but that's going to be the regulation going into place. The manufacturer of this, Holy Stone, has submitted a prototype for an add-on remote identifier to the FAA, and hopefully they're planning on making it dirt cheap to add to all these drones here. So we'll find out, I guess, within a few weeks. The prototype
Does it have to?
Sorry?
Oh, I just had a question about the regulation. Does it have to be in a particular format, or if you're a amateur radio operator, could you just have it broadcast like in Morse code, all that information
That I don't know.
somehow? Like you
I
can make a
don't know
little homebrew.
Yeah. For homebrew, I can understand that, yes. I'm thinking more like kind of an APRS setup where that might be able to do all of those, where it can give you altitude and bearing and all that kind of stuff in it if you had it all in a chip. But I actually don't know exactly all the wherewithal of it. I'm hoping that if Holy Stone comes out with that transmitter, that it will be inexpensive and I can just upgrade this readily. Otherwise, the FAA might postpone the order again. For the last 2 or 3 years, they've kept moving the date of having this regulation come into effect. So hopefully it'll happen again and they'll bump it down, kick the can down the road a little longer and we can still keep flying. Yes.
These regulations driven down into RC planes haven't been flying for years. Haven't heard anything.
No.
They're 100 times more dangerous.
Oh, I agree. Well, I think the government's thinking more along a security issue, or that's what I'm thinking of. Because yes, I think that has a lot to do with it. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. 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 Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
So is there an age limit of like how old you have to be to do the safety test and that kind of thing? Do you know?
I don't
Like,
think so.
what if you're a kid with a drone? Does the parent have to also take it, or is it just the kid?
You could look on the FAA website just to be sure, but I don't recall seeing
Okay.
any kind of age limit. And they do manufacture, Holy Stone manufactures models of these drones specifically for kids to utilize. And a lot of those are even micro drones, so you don't even have to register them. So micro drone being under 250 grams or less in total weight, essentially. So I'm just hoping that I can keep on flying right now as it is. That might just be a case of there's going to be a lot of people not being compliant and flying them. You're just going to have to get caught. And I don't see how they can unless you're flying it right outside an airport and being obnoxious about it. I can't see them really chasing after people to enforce this kind of thing. So. Not saying that I will break the law, just saying. Right. Mhm. Very good. All right. The next slide shows a few pictures from my past outings. These three slides here are from my friend's farm up in Hurdle Mills, and that's the slide over there is where I took it to maximum altitude and took a shot out into the countryside. And I didn't break the North Carolina law because he gave me permission to fly the drone. So yeah, that's pictures of his house right there, and a few folks. And this shot here is actually outside the back here. I'm looking down Highway 70 towards Hillsborough, essentially with that shot. And next. And next, this is a short video. Yeah. And we're gonna, and one thing I'm supposed to give you is the chip for the other videos today. So let's see if that'll work. Try it.
Subsystem has to be tamper resistant.
Yeah, this is a little bit slow because actually when I look at at this on my computer, it's running in real time. I don't get the stutter that you see here. It's just bandwidth issue here, but. Okay. That's you, yeah. That was the time, was at the end of a exam session, I think, and you came by for some reason, and I was just and that's I use the thumb wheel to pan the camera up and down. I'm dropping altitude, bringing the drone forward. So I'm trying to learn how to be a videographer so I can move the camera a little bit more smoothly. That's us down there. All right, next slide, please. And that's a few of the resources available if you want to look into drones here. So the FAA page is probably where most of the information you can find is here on the regulations, link to get to the UAS safety test, which we're all required to take to fly a drone, and also a link so you can download the Before You Fly app. And Holy Stone Corporation, if you want to look into the various model of drones, yes, they are a Chinese company, but their drones are pretty inexpensive, easy to operate. And probably if you do a Google search, you could find a number of other drone manufacturers. And it's just like amateur radio or photography, you can find low-end models or spend cubic dollars to get more of the bells and whistles, more greater capability, larger drones, which are stronger and faster, that kind of thing. Anybody have any questions further on that? On anything that I've shown you tonight or outside? All right, well, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it.